had always loved books, the hidden worlds between pages, the scent of unspoken words, the secrets tucked behind every line. Maybe that's why most of my life was spent inside libraries. But the night I'm about to tell you about wasn't an ordinary night. It was a freezing December evening. Cold winds rattled the city as raindrops drummed steadily against the streets. I was heading toward my favorite library, nestled deep in the old part of town, a worn-out, three-story stone building known as Westbrook Public Library. Many stories surrounded that place. Some said a young girl had once gone missing there. Others swore they'd seen shadowy figures moving silently between the book aisles. But I never believed any of it. I was just a lover of books, nothing more. That night, the library was staying open later than usual, and I wanted to take full advantage of it to finish some research. When I pushed the door open, the old wood creaked loudly, almost like it was announcing my arrival on purpose. Inside, the lights were dim and yellowish. A slight chill floated through the narrow corridors of books. "Mr. Howard, you're here quite late tonight," came the voice of Mrs. Lena, the library's sole staff member. I smiled and replied, "Just here to get a little more reading done." She nodded faintly and went back to her work behind the counter. I climbed the creaky stairs to the upper floor where the oldest books were kept, the section no one visited anymore. I was just settling down at a dusty table when something caught my eye. Right there in the middle of a shelf, a book lay half open, almost as if someone had just placed it there moments ago. Curious, I stood up and approached it. As soon as I touched the cover, a freezing sensation traveled from my fingertips straight down my spine. The room fell into an eerie silence, so deep that I could hear the pounding of my own heartbeat. And then, I thought I heard a whisper right beside my ear. "Go back!" I jerked around, heart racing, but no one was there. Only the dead books, the cold air, and the whispering walls of the old building. I shook it off and placed the book on the table. Its title read, "Whispers from the Forgotten." The pages were torn and shredded, as if someone had ripped through them in anger or desperation. On the very first page, there was a handwritten note. "Those who find this, never leave." A shiver crept through me. I shook my head, brushing it off as a prank, probably someone trying to spook readers. I dove into reading. Minutes turned into hours. Each page seemed to open a door to another chilling story. Cries in the dark, footsteps approaching, glimpses of shadowy figures. Suddenly, a loud scream echoed from downstairs. I shot up from my chair. "Mrs. Lena?" I rushed down the stairs, but the counter was empty. Only her chair, gently rocking back and forth, creaked softly. "Mrs. Lena?" I called out again. No response. Only the distant sound of a book falling somewhere deeper inside the library. I moved toward the sound, my steps growing slower and heavier, as if something was pulling me down. Then I saw it, in the middle aisle, a shadow, tall, thin, walking hunched over unnaturally. The shadow stopped. As I edged closer, I could feel it turning toward me. I wanted to run, but my feet refused to move, rooted to the floor. The shadow moved closer. My heart was hammering in my chest. And then, in an instant, it vanished, leaving behind only a whisper. "You are one of them now." I forced myself to break free and dash toward the main door, but it wouldn't open. I shoved, pulled, banged, nothing. It was like the door was welded shut. And then, through the mist forming on the glass, a message appeared. No way out. A single thought shot through my mind. Get to the windows upstairs. I ran back up, but the upstairs was no longer the same. Books were scattered chaotically across the floor. Streaks of blood stained the wooden planks. And the walls. The walls were covered with claw marks, like someone had tried to dig their way out. I stumbled forward, and there, in the corner, was that same book, Whispers from the Forgotten, lying open, its pages now smeared with blood-red writing. Once you read, you are trapped forever. That's when I sensed someone behind me. I turned around. A little girl stood there, her hair soaked, her clothes torn, her eyes empty. "You read it too?" she whispered, her voice hollow and broken. I tried to respond, but my mouth was dry. My tongue stuck. She reached out and lightly touched the book in my hands. And in that instant, a flood of visions overwhelmed me. Countless others across different times and ages, trapped inside this library. Each lured by a different book, each trying and failing to escape. This library wasn't just a building, it was alive, a hunting ground for lost souls to feed its endless hunger. Now, I understood, but it was already too late. I made one final desperate sprint toward the door, but as I neared it, the entire library began to tremble. The walls bent inward, enclosing around me. The lights flickered and died, swallowing everything in complete darkness. And then, I realized I was no longer myself. I had become a part of the library, another forgotten story, never to be read, only to whisper. So if you ever find yourself wandering through the old wing of Westbrook Public Library, you might hear someone calling you from between the aisles. You might hear the lost voice of Howard, trapped forever. You might even be tempted to pick up an old forgotten book, and so a new story would begin. Sometimes in life, we get so absorbed in our busy routines that we fail to hear the footsteps of danger approaching. We believe that our hectic schedules will shield us, that nothing can reach us while we are lost in our to-do lists. But the most terrifying things often lurk in silence, and by the time we realize it, it's already too late. This story happened on a Wednesday night, a night I thought would be ordinary, but it changed my life forever. The start of that night, I was drowning in responsibilities that semester. Double majors, 6 classes, an internship, endless homework. Every day felt like a battlefield, and every night I collapsed into bed, only to start again the next day. That Wednesday had been especially brutal. 7 hours at the internship, followed by 3 classes and 2 major exams scheduled for Thursday morning. Exams that would decide if I passed the semester or not. As soon as my internship ended, I hurried straight to the university library. It was the only place where I could study in peace. The library stayed open until midnight, and at night it was almost eerily quiet, perfect for deep focus. At 9 p.m., I reached the library. There were still quite a few students scattered around, heads bent over books, whispering quietly among themselves. I headed to my usual spot, a table near the big glass windows, slightly tucked away from the main aisles where I could see the world outside but remain wrapped in silence inside. I pulled out my notes and buried myself in them, the noise of the world fading away. 10:45 p.m. At around 10:45 p.m., as more students packed up and left, a deeper kind of silence settled in. It was then that I heard footsteps approaching. I looked up. There he was, a man I had never seen before, late 20s or early 30s, dressed simply in jeans and a jacket, a backpack slung over his shoulder. There were many empty tables around, but he chose to sit right across from me. A strange unease prickled at the back of my neck. Something about him didn't feel right. The first interaction, within minutes he leaned slightly toward me and said, "Excuse me, are you taking Econ 240 by any chance?" I shook my head politely and went back to my notes. I hoped that would be the end of it. It wasn't. He started talking about how stressed he was, how the professor always gave surprise quizzes, how he really needed help. I mumbled something sympathetic without encouraging him further, keeping my eyes on my books. But I could feel his eyes on me, staring, lingering. When I finally glanced up, he was still looking at me, smiling. A smile that didn't reach his eyes, a hollow, empty smile. The doubt grows. A few minutes later, he asked for my name. I lied without hesitation. "Chelsea," I said. He laughed softly. "Chelsea, you have the bluest eyes I've ever seen." My heart skipped a beat. My eyes aren't blue, not even close. Something was definitely off. I decided to test him. I casually asked, "So which professor are you taking Econ 240 with?" He hesitated, stammered a little, then said, Professor Davis." My stomach tightened. There was no Professor Davis teaching at our university. I quickly pulled up Rate My Professor on my phone to double-check. No Davis listed under economics. Now there was no doubt in my mind. He didn't belong here. Seeking help, I packed up my things slowly, trying not to seem panicked, and walked briskly toward the main desk, where a security guard was stationed. I explained quietly but urgently. The guard nodded, alert. He approached the man and asked for his university ID. The man started making excuses. "I left it in my dorm room. I'm just here to study, man. Chill." The guard wasn't buying it. Firmly, he told him to leave. The stranger stood up, glaring at me before he walked out, a stare so full of burning anger that it sent a chill down my spine. Walking back alone, I stayed a few minutes longer inside, heart pounding, then finally decided to leave. It was almost midnight. Outside, the campus was eerily empty. Only the faint hum of streetlights and the rustling of trees filled the night. I tightened my jacket and walked quickly toward my dorm. No music, no distractions. I just wanted to get inside safely. Footsteps again. After a few minutes of walking, I heard it. Footsteps behind me. I turned around quickly. Nothing. The path was empty. I told myself it was just my imagination. Kept walking faster. But the footsteps grew louder, closer. I dared not look back again. I just walked faster, almost running now. And then he appeared, the same man from the library. He sprinted toward me. Before I could scream, he grabbed me, one hand over my mouth, the other dragging me toward the bushes. I struggled, kicked, tried to bite, but he was strong, terrifyingly strong. His breath was hot and ragged against my ear. "Be quiet," he hissed, "or I'll kill you." He began pulling me deeper into the darkness. I fought harder, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. Suddenly, voices in the distance. Two guys shouting, "Hey, what's going on over there?" The man froze. For a second, he looked at me, pure hatred in his eyes, then let go and ran. I collapsed onto the ground, gasping, crying. The two guys ran to me, helping me up. They called campus police immediately. The campus police arrived within minutes. Using security cameras, they spotted the man's image and issued a full alert. Later that night, he was caught, hiding behind a bar a few blocks from campus. Turned out he wasn't a student at all. He was a drifter, a man with a criminal record, assault, stalking, attempted kidnapping. He had been lurking around college campuses for weeks, looking for vulnerable students. That night he almost succeeded. Almost. For weeks after that, I couldn't sleep properly. I jumped at every noise, every shadow. I barely left my dorm without a group. The university added more security, issued warnings. Things slowly returned to normal. For everyone else. For me, things were never quite the same again, because now I knew. Danger doesn't always come with warning signs. Sometimes it walks straight up to you, sits across from you, smiles. When I was 7, my family moved to a new city. Everything changed after that. New school, new friends, new surroundings. But the memories before that, they're mostly a blur. Just flashes, like pieces of a dream you can't quite put together. Except for one memory, one that never faded, one that still haunts me like a shadow in my mind. I must have been 5 or maybe 6 at the time. It was a weekend, I remember that much. Our mom used to take me and my older brother to a nearby library every Saturday. It was just a few blocks from our house, and going there had become a little tradition. But that particular day started a little differently. We first went to the mall. I remember the smell of new clothes, the music playing in the background, the rush of people. Mom bought us a few things. I think I got a new hoodie or something. But what I do remember clearly is that we got ice cream from the McDonald's inside the mall. It was kind of our reward. I had a vanilla cone. I always got vanilla. After shopping, we made our way to the library. I was still licking my melting ice cream as we walked in. The cold sweetness dripped down my fingers, but I didn't care. The library was a big brick building, quiet and a little too cold. It had that smell, old books, wooden shelves, and something else I couldn't describe. The children's section was tucked away in one of the far corners of the building. That was my favorite place. It had bright rugs, colorful chairs, and a few computers where kids could play learning games. My brother rushed to the computers as always, and I followed him. But I got bored pretty fast. The games weren't fun anymore. I wanted to look for something else. I remembered the I Spy books, the kind where you find hidden objects in detailed pictures. Those had always fascinated me. I left the computer and began wandering through the aisles, looking for the shelf where they kept those books. The library was mostly empty that day, just a couple of adults reading near the windows. As I turned into an aisle near the far wall, I suddenly heard it. Peek! It was a playful sound, almost like someone whispering a game into the silence. I turned around, thinking maybe it was my brother trying to spook me, but there was no one. I paused. Then slowly, from behind one of the tall shelves, a face peeked out. Half a face, actually. A man. Just his eye, part of his nose, and a sliver of his mouth. He was peeking at me through the books and grinning. "Peekaboo," he whispered. I giggled. I wasn't scared, not even a little. It felt like a game, like how my uncle used to play peekaboo with me when I was younger. The man ducked back behind the shelf and then peeked again from the other end. "Peekaboo," he said once more, in a sing-song voice. I laughed again. He did it a few more times, appearing from random spots behind the books. I was small, innocent, and thought he was just a friendly grown-up. Then he stepped out from behind the shelf. He was tall, wearing a brown coat, and had thinning black hair. His eyes were strange, though. Not scary, but intense. He crouched down to my level and asked, "What are you looking for, buddy?" "I spy books," I replied without hesitation. He smiled. "Oh, I know exactly where those are. Come on, I'll help you find one." He gently took my hand. I didn't resist. He didn't pull or force. It felt like someone helping me cross the street. He led me to another shelf and pulled out one of the books. We sat at one of the tiny reading tables, and he opened it. We started looking for hidden objects together. He asked me things like what my name was, who I came with. I answered honestly, like any kid would. "My mom and my brother," I told him. "They're at the computers." He nodded slowly. "That's nice. Do you like it here?" I said yes, and then he asked if I wanted to see a secret playroom downstairs. Now, that moment. That's the first time I felt something off. I don't know what it was exactly. Maybe the way he said secret, or maybe the way he kept holding my hand. But when he said there were toys and games downstairs, my curiosity won over my hesitation. He led me down a narrow staircase that I hadn't noticed before. It was at the back of the children's section, next to a staff-only door. I followed him quietly. The basement was dimly lit and cold. There was a playroom, or at least what looked like one, a few shelves of toys, puzzles, and building blocks. He brought me to a corner with a bin of Lego pieces and told me to play. I picked up a few, but something didn't feel right. He stood nearby, watching me too closely. Then he sat down right behind me, and his tone changed. "Build a castle," he said. I didn't want to. I wanted to go back upstairs. "Come on, build it," he said more firmly. "We'll play together." Then, just as I was about to speak, in the library's intercom buzzed overhead. "William, please come to the front desk. Your mother is looking for you." The voice was calm, but it echoed in the silence like thunder. The man froze. Then, and without warning, he stood up and turned off the light. Complete darkness swallowed the room. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Shh," he whispered. "Let's play hide and seek now. You hide. Quietly. Don't scream." I was frozen in place. My heart pounded so hard I thought he'd hear it. I couldn't see a thing. I could only hear him moving. Footsteps, breathing, and then I screamed, "Mommy!" I don't even know how I found the strength. I screamed again, louder. "Mommy, I'm here!" He hissed, "Stop that!" and tried to hush me, moving closer. I don't remember how, but I kicked something, maybe him, and bolted, my hands stretched out blindly in the darkness until I hit the wall. I groped upward, found the doorknob, and flung the door open. Light. I ran up the stairs, crying, screaming. The world above felt like another planet. I sprinted across the children's section and straight to the front desk, where a small crowd had gathered. I saw her, my mom. She turned, and when she saw me, she dropped everything and ran to me. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing. She kept asking me what happened, but I couldn't speak. I just cried. The library staff called someone. Security, I think. Maybe the police too, I don't remember. I told them about the man, the basement, everything. But by the time they searched, he was gone, like he'd vanished into thin air. They told my mother that the basement playroom wasn't open to the public, that it was for staff use only, and that no one had permission to take a child down there. We never went back to that library again. For weeks I had nightmares, not just about the man, but about being in the dark, about hearing someone whisper peekaboo in my ear when no one was there. Now as an adult, I still wonder what would have happened if the intercom hadn't called my name, if I hadn't screamed, if I hadn't gotten away. I think about the grip on my wrist, the way he watched me, the lights going out, and I realize, whatever his intentions were, they weren't innocent. I came so close to disappearing, to becoming another unsolved case on the news, a photo on a missing child poster, another name carved into silence, and all it took was 1 second of trust, 1 second I'll never forget.